Hello, my friends, and welcome to Reasoned Live. Now, what a show we've got jam-packed actually, for you today. And I'm hoping it's going to go off without a single hitch. But, as you know, these things go the way they want to go, and there may be a few mishaps along the way. But I've been beavering away in this little room, scurrying like a little rat, which is how many on the political left view me, actually. So, you know, if the cap fits. But I've put together a show. Hopefully it's going to work. You're going to hear from a whole host of guests, some of them regulars, one of them not. So find out who that is very, very shortly. Now, someone on YouTube comments saying, this loopy clown is unbelievable. I do hope I'm not the loopy clown, but I've been called worse. So we'll roll with it. We'll roll with it. Thank you for your company. Thank you for joining. Coming up on the show today... well, we've got a whole load of things for you. The top Tory tossed. Priti didn't stick. Priti Patel is out. Robert Jenrick received the highest number of MPs supporting him within the Conservative Parliamentary Party. Are you happy about that? Were you sad to see Priti Patel go? She was, of course, the Home Secretary that presided over record levels of immigration. It put to bed the notion of taking back control. Let us know in the comment section what you think of that. We'll be getting onto that shortly, so any of your feedback would be well received indeed. And why do fewer Brits actually feel pride in this country? There's a poll out that says that actually pride in Britain has dropped to 64%. So why is it that so many, and it is primarily the younger generations, who do not feel pride in their own country? Now, I personally vehemently disagree with that notion. I'm very much in the same grain as my grandfather on this. So my view as a 31-year-old male is probably out of kilter with much of my generation. Why is that? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. We'll get onto that later on. And the Labour desperation to keep the Muslim vote. A government minister, a junior minister, but a minister nonetheless, got up on the A&E waiting list because of the fact she took a stand on the Gaza question. Is this a sign of religious sectarianism seeping through British politics in a really, really quite worrying way indeed? And Labour MPs lose it at a far-right student. We've got he isn't far-right, by the way, but as you all well know, anyone sort of to the right of Jeremy Corbyn these days is quote-unquote far-right. But we'll be discussing what he said to a Labour MP to make him blow like I don't know what. I think Pompey back in the day would be blushing at the rage at which Clive Lewis MP, that's who it was, actually erupted at this student for asking him questions around border security. Why is it, my friends, that Labour MPs are so reticent to talk about that particular issue? Why is it they'd rather talk about absolutely anything else? Again, fire your questions into the actual comment section and we'll be able to respond to those and bring them up shortly indeed. Right, enough from me. I'll shut my gob now. Time to bring on who is actually joining us. So, hello. Panel, hello. I haven't got you muted. No, I haven't. So, of course, Chloe is on my far left. Is that how it feels for the viewers? I don't know. You probably are to the left of me, Chloe, let's be honest. But Chloe, thank you very much for your company.
That's so insulting. Thank you, Darren.
Alex Armstrong joins as well. He was meant to be on a posh sort of slap-up lunch, but he's joined us instead. So thank you very much, Alex.
Pleasure as always.
Eunice, the absolute fearless warrior of anti-Islam, is joining us now as well. Eunice, thank you very much for your company too. Now,
thanks, man.
The comments are coming in thick and fast on those topics, so let's get straight into them. I want to start then by talking about the Labour Party, because I'm pretty damn actually... well, I was going to say I'm shocked. I'm not shocked. I knew they would be awful. I just didn't think it would happen so quickly is the problem. So the Labour Party this week announced that there would be a partial ban on arms sales to the state of Israel. Now, they actually have argued that it's a partial ban. You know, they're not banning everything to Israel so it can be rendered unable to actually defend itself. But when it comes into the context of the wider mood and the rhetoric that's been displayed in protest against clamping down on those protesting against mass migration, when that didn't happen for the pro-Palestine protests, when actually you see MPs, which we'll get onto in a second, talking about getting moved up the waiting list for their taking a stance like this one on Gaza. There are a host of things in which I think this starts to get really sinister indeed. And Claire Fox had this to say in the House of Lords earlier today. I actually saw Claire at a wedding at the weekend and she was on fine form, but she was on even finer form in the House of Lords today. Here's what she had to say.
Does the Minister understand that one of the concerns is that Israel is treated differently and to a higher standard than any other country in the world? So I'm delighted to hear that this international law is all-seeing and so on. But as somebody who has noted how much there has been in terms of arms sales to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, is the Minister really telling me that every single time David Lammy and his lawyers have looked at it and said, my goodness, what's happening in Yemen is an absolute haven of peace and no humanitarian law has been broken? I mean, I'm just suggesting that people are rather confused and it feels disingenuous and it feels as though Israel is being punished, pointed at, demonised and told that they are in breach of humanitarian law. And they are not, no matter what you say. They are defending themselves and they are being punished morally, even if not that the number of arms really matters.
This is not about punishing Israel. Israel are our allies and we support them and we support their right to defend themselves. This decision has been made consistent with the law to which we are obliged to follow. And I do understand, of course I understand, the point about Israel not wishing to be treated differently. We do understand that. And that is why the tone of the statement yesterday was as it was. And that is why we are clear that this decision is limited, it is not an embargo, and it was made with regret.
Yeah, well, is that why your American allies are actually saying that you've done the wrong thing here and are actually criticising you for it? Are you suggesting the Americans don't believe in human rights and international law? Evidently not. You're doing this because you are political cowards and you're worried about losing your ever-growing, ever-stronger Muslim vote. So Claire Fox absolutely put that Labour minister in her place, and she used to be the MP for Darlington, this woman. Jenny Chapman is her name. And of course, she teamed up with Sir Keir Starmer to be one of the champions for reversing Brexit. So to see her put in her box by Baroness Fox, I think was absolutely marvellous. But just before I bring that to you, and I'm going to throw it to Eunice first, the context here is a wider picture when you have a government minister, which Jess Phillips is, junior, but a government minister nonetheless, actually saying that her Gaza ceasefire vote sped up her NHS treatment. Now, does that mean that if you're a Zionist, as many of us in this chat are, that you would be at the back of the queue for NHS treatment, that actually we will be serving people in hospitals along religious lines, that actually a woman who almost lost her seat in the face of a really brutal Islamist campaign in which an activist of Jess Phillips had her tyres slashed. She was followed. Jess Phillips was genuinely, I think, I can infer that from what she said and the way in which she accepted her win, which was narrow, that actually she was quite frightened by it. So this all comes in that context, and I think this is naked pandering, actually, to that vote that they are scared of in more ways than one. And should we as a nation, in turn, therefore be scared of it too? Eunice, I'll throw that out to you. On those two questions, why are Labour doing this? And secondly, is it the right thing to do to actually ban certain arms from going to Israel?
So Labour are doing this for two reasons. As you said, they are pandering to the Islamic votes. And obviously there's a lot more Muslims than there are Jewish people. But to your second question, no, they are doing the wrong thing because Israel is the front line of democracy and people don't realize this. I'm Iranian, okay? And I grew up in Iran and I know exactly how the Islamic Republic of Iran operates. They are the ones that are actually genocidal towards Israel. They are the ones that believe Israel shouldn't exist. There are 21 Arabic states. There's only one Jewish state. And Iran is sponsoring Hamas, Houthis, and Hezbollah to try to get rid of the Israelis. And they are basically using the Palestinians as a token. They are the ones that don't care about the Palestinians because the Israelis have said multiple times, we're going to give you a state. Every single time they said no. And that's why they shout river to the sea. And by stopping arms to Israel, you're giving more ammunition to countries like Iran. Because Iran is just laughing right now, saying, well, the UK doesn't support you anymore. And also within America, there's like a big uprising against the Palestinians. But the problem is that people are so naive and they're so easily tricked. Of course, I want Palestinians to survive. Do I feel sorry for the Palestinian children? Of course I do. But it's the Hamas leadership and the Iranian government is the one that are sacrificing their own people. In 2006, the Hamas leadership was given more than 6 billion, almost $20 billion in foreign aid by the United Kingdom, by America. And they could have literally built Gaza to be the new Singapore or the new Dubai. But instead of building up Gaza, they built tunnels. And they've been shooting rockets towards Israel every single year. And if Israel didn't have the Iron Dome, Israel would be destructed right now. You know, Israel is a democracy. I'm not saying everything Israel does is right? But at the end of the day, Israel has atomic bombs. They can turn Gaza into glass and into rubble in less than an hour if they wanted to. So there is no genocidal intent on part of Israel. The genocidal intent is actually from Hamas and from Iran and from Hezbollah and from maybe some Arabic countries around the region that believe that Israel shouldn't exist. So by stopping arms to Israel, we're doing a great disservice, not just to the Israelis, but also to the Palestinians, okay? And we're basically supporting terrorist organizations and countries such as Iran.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, you are aware of people's problems in Iran as a republic. I wonder then, do you think actually, does it worry you that the party of government right now within the United Kingdom is basically pandering to them, essentially, if you agree with what Eunice has just said in his analysis?
Yeah, I certainly do agree with Eunice there. I think what's more concerning to me than anything is that, well, we knew, first of all, let's not pretend we knew Labour were going to do this. We knew they were going to become a more pro-Palestine party and screw up the relationship, the very strong relationship we've had with Israel for decades. We knew that was going to happen. I'm not surprised to see it. What I think is more shocking, which I hope we talk about later on, is a new coalition of pro-Gaza MPs in Parliament, which I think is a really, really strong indication of the way this country is going.
Yeah.
What really concerns me today is that we have a foreign secretary in the shape of David Lammy, probably one of the most unintelligent people in politics, and he's not looked down upon just by right-wingers, but by his own party as well, quite frankly. And this is the man that is supposed to be representing our country. He's meant to be advising the Prime Minister on the sort of deals we should be doing. And so far, he's already managed to ruin one of our strongest relationships with the only democracy in the Middle East. Not only that, despite what Keir Starmer says, the rumbles are that America are extremely unhappy with this decision. But you also have to take into consideration the optics of when and how this was done. This was done on the same day that six hostages were found to be shot dead. Yeah. It is absolutely appalling. This government is a disaster for our country, not only in foreign policy, but for our look across the world. What kind of message does this send, as Eunice said quite correctly, to our enemies in Iran and elsewhere? It's shocking.
Chloe, were you shocked by the Jess Phillips story? Because when I first saw it, I sort of thought, oh God, someone's made this up. But it's from my good friend Stephanie Tetchy, who appears on GB News. She's the one that published this for Mail Online. Now, I was absolutely flabbergasted by it, but maybe I shouldn't be, because she's absolutely desperate to keep hold of her seat. And there is only one opposition that stands a chance of taking that seat in a very, very growing Muslim part of the country.
I mean, I was shocked by this coming from Jess Phillips, her saying publicly that she was basically able to skip the queue in the NHS. And, there are a lot of people in this country who are resentful and angry about the fact that they cannot get the treatment that they need on the NHS. I mean, I thought to say that it was just such bad optics. And then think about what David Lammy did. Alex has just mentioned the optics of this were terrible, right? You might think that there should be a ban on arms sales to Israel. I don't agree with that opinion, but you might think that. But at least have the common sense to think maybe we shouldn't do it right after 6 Israeli hostages have just been murdered and their families are attending the funerals and grieving. I mean, I'm just thinking, does the Labour Party, do they have a PR team that maybe speaks to them and says, maybe guys, this isn't a great idea? But then, I mean, the point you make, Darren, about maybe just thinking in terms of her constituency rather than the whole party and the whole country, maybe this is the right thing for her in terms of optics, her trying to boast how pro-Gaza she is.
Yeah.
I mean, I just couldn't believe, just going back to when her vote count was done, what she said on that LBC interview, where after she was screaming,
it's because they're men.
In the audience, it's because they're men. It's nothing to do with the fact that they're Muslim. I don't know if
it's just pathetic.
I don't know if she genuinely believes that, or she was saying that to make sure that she keeps the Muslims in her constituency happy.
Right, before we get on to more, I'm just going to read out some of the comments. Steve says, if she said that regarding Jess Phillips, if she said that, has she also said how wrong it was? Well, no, I don't think she thinks it was wrong, to be honest, evidently, or it wouldn't be in the public domain. You would keep that to yourself if you weren't mightily proud of it, for the reasons that Chloe has just pointed out, that actually you want people in the constituency to think that you are on their side, even if they hold what I would deem to be some of the most barbaric views that are anti-women, anti-gay, anti-equality, anti-whatever you want. I don't think Islamists or Islamism should have any place in this country, and I'll probably go to the gulags for saying that. And speaking of the gulags, one of our viewers, Tic Tac on YouTube, says, your comments are coming in so fast, I've just lost Tic Tac. There we are. This lineup is like a lineup of Crime Watch. So we all look like we're, heading for the slammer, which we probably all are after this stream.
Yeah, quite. It will be a party, I think.
It would. It would be good fun. I doubt they'd put us in the same prison, given that they're all full. I'll be in Northumberland.
Unless we claim we're women.
Yeah, well, good idea.
I'm going to be alone, guys. You guys can all have your merry little band together.
No, we're all women if we get arrested. Don't worry, Chloe.
Superfish says, spelling your name wrong, I'm afraid, Eunice, but it's a very kind comment, so you'll appreciate it. Says, Eunice, spell check, is gorgeous, heart face. So there we are. And it gave us £2 in a super chat. Thank you.
Love it.
Yeah, exactly. You're getting us the money in. You're like our hooker. And
this is an OnlyFans, guys. We should reasoned on OnlyFans from next week.
Maybe we should start one. Raise money.
And so a load of people commenting on ask them to actually define far right, which leads us on to the next conversation, which we'll get on to imminently. Our guest is in the waiting room. But one of our viewers, Moz, on YouTube, says it's a stab in the back to Israel. Even more so, Israel was remade by the British, of course, after after the Second World War, through the Balfour Agreement. But yes, lots of, irate people, to be perfectly frank, on the fact that, and Chloe, there are certain requests for things from you, which I'm not going to read out on this stream, because that really is getting into OnlyFans territory. Wash your mind out, you filthy beggars. Anywho.
I did get an interesting email the other day.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I saw that on your story actually.
Oh, the door's going.
Someone emailed me asking if they're like, "Oh, I love your work for Reasoned. Have you got a what's it called, Feet Finder or something profile or an OnlyFans? I'd love to buy some of your content."
I thought this Feet Finder thing, they just upload pictures of people's feet without actually them uploading it, or do they upload their own feet?
I have no idea.
But how? Where? Sorry, I just
in
stepped
that
out
area.
of the room for 3 seconds, and we've got onto feet pictures.
I think my feet are on the internet on this Feet Finder thing.
Oh my god!
I don't know why I look like a hobbit. I don't know why anyone would want my feet.
On the internet,
Yes, I'm very into Lord of the Rings at the minute because I've been watching the Amazon series, so all my references are Lord of the Rings themed. Hello to all of those joining. Thank you very much for your company. We will get on to our guest now, who is James Harvey, who is, Chloe, a student at Bristol, right?
I can't remember. I'm not sure exactly.
Well,
which
James will
university
tell us.
He was going to.
He will tell us. He will tell us. I should know this. I'm so sorry. Yes, but James had a run-in with an MP who, well, you'll probably know who he is because you'll have seen him lose his temper in the past as well. But he really, really does take the Michael and push things to the extremes, despite the fact that he calls everyone else other than him extreme. But anyway, we'll hear all about it. But I want to actually watch what happened, and then we'll bring James in. But this is the clip.
How am I far right? How am I far right?
Because of some of the stuff that you're sharing.
Like what? Give me an example. Give me an example.
You're talking about votes. You're talking about asylum seekers.
Oh, so I'm talking about something makes me far right? No, not it. No, it's not gassing the Jews. It's talking about things negatively, right?
No, not negatively. But if you talk about things which are racist, which are untrue,
what's racist?
Which are disinformation, victimising asylum seekers.
I'm not victimising them. I'm saying they're not asylum seekers.
So do you think
how am I far right? How am I far right?
Because of some of the stuff that you're sharing.
Good God. I mean, if that doesn't give you a sign of what the Labour Party is, direction they're heading in, I don't know what will. But let's bring James in, and James can actually tell us what it's all about. One of our viewers says Norwich, which obviously he is the MP for Norwich. But we'll hear from James now. Hello, James.
Hello.
Can you hear us? You can hear us.
Hi,
Good.
James.
I got it to work. Woohoo! That's a start. James, give us.
Thank you for having me on, guys.
Not at all. Thank you very much for joining us. Give us the skinny on what this is, and actually tell us what bloody university you're at. That would be a start.
So I used to attend the University of Wales Trinity St David's in Swansea.
Okay, so I was
quite
way
helpful.
off. Yeah, it is actually.
Well, I'm Welsh, so I've only moved up to England recently. So I spent most of my time in Wales, but I was there for 2 years until I was kicked out.
Right. Wow. Okay. Gosh, there's a story
What did you do?
there.
Tell us what you did. What did you get kicked out for?
So back when I was in university is when I first founded Students Against Tyranny. It was actually just before my first year is when I founded it. And we managed to get
Students Against Tyranny for people that want to find it, right? Yeah, Students Against Tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're now on Twitter as well. We set up an account recently, so you can find us on there. So I set up that just before going to university, and I've recently managed to get all of the emails between faculty about myself while I was there, and they would send emails to each other about my latest antics when I got arrested in Cardiff, for example, for protesting a child sweetie shop that was selling adult paraphernalia out in the open for children to grab. Right, so I got arrested. So I removed them all off the shelves, and we got arrested for criminal damage. And when I organised protests in Swansea and places like that, and so they'd all be talking about it and trying to find a kind of a reason to kick me out. And interestingly, when I organised a protest in Swansea, about 15-minute cities, a lot of the counter protesters lived in the same halls as me. They went to the same university as me. They sat in the same classes as me. Didn't say a word to me in person, but then instantly they're in a big group and they're all chanting Nazi. You know, it's the same old stuff. Mob mentality, isn't it? But ultimately, I was kicked out for a series of things, and what was it for? So I think the main thing was the Oxford protest. So if anyone remembers, in Oxford, they did a, what was it? They did a protest about 15-minute cities. Antifa lied and claimed I organised it. I didn't organise it. I had no involvement in it. I just went up there with the organisers to do a bit of leafleting. So they claimed I organised that. The uni didn't like that. They didn't like a lot of the things I did. And so they kind of put it down to missing modules, but the modules weren't missing. And I was given wrong deadlines and stuff like that. Something that I proved online. So, yeah, it was basically a kind of collection of things. I think one of the things...
But you think it's ideologically motivated, crucially, right?
Absolutely. And I used to expose what is being taught. So one of the things was we were brought up, and I know a lot of people don't like us talking about the EDL, that's fine. But they brought up a picture on the screen of a Hindu woman standing up to a member of the EDL. And I explained to the teacher, they're not racist, right? And I took a 2-second video clip where I didn't actually show anyone's faces, didn't show anyone speaking or anything, just showed what was on the screen. And for that, they pulled me into a disciplinary meeting, and I was told that I'm not allowed to question the curriculum in this meeting. I was also not allowed to bring any representation to defend me. I was told to bring someone from the student union. The student union fund protests against me. How is that fair representation?
Yeah.
So ultimately now I've been kicked out, and the university has actually lied about when I was kicked out. They're saying I was kicked out a full term before I was actually kicked out. And so now Student Loans Company is saying I owe them £5,000, and they've got debt collection agencies ringing me. Yeah.
Good God. Right. So it's all kicked off. But tell us how did you, because clearly you are an activist, but tell us how you came to be in, I assume this clip is from Norwich, right? Because he is the MP there. Yeah. So this is Clive Lewis, and I'll just bring that back up for those that didn't see it. I'll play it one more time if you don't mind, because it is a short clip, just for those that are just joining.
How am I far right? How am I far right? Because of some of the stuff that you're sharing. Like what? Give me an example. You're talking about boats. You're talking about asylum seekers.
Oh, so I'm talking about something makes me far right. No, not it. No. It's not gassing the Jews. It's talking about things negatively, right?
No, not negatively. But if you talk about things which are racist, which are untrue,
what's racist?
Which is disinformation. Victimising asylum seekers.
I'm not victimising them. I'm saying they're not asylum seekers.
So do you think? How am I?
So how did you come to actually be there to bump into this lovely individual? And actually, what was the sort of opening salvo? How did you approach him?
So there's a lot of context that needs to go with this. And I think the main thing is that for the past 5 months, this will be our 5th one now, we've been organising, Students Against Tyranny have been organising a series of demonstrations in Norwich. So at the University of East Anglia, which is one of the most woke, one of the most wokest universities in the UK. It's not that restrictive around free speech, but they're extremely woke, yeah? And they've got a sports park facility, right, with a swimming pool. And there was an incident about 2 years ago where a woman walked into the female changing rooms and saw a naked man twice. She brought these concerns to staff, who then told it would be discriminatory to question the naked male, right? Now, I've spoken to people since. This naked individual is spotted at the sports park in the female changing facilities at least once every couple of weeks, right? So it's a regular occurrence. Once there was a bit of uproar about this, the sports park released a statement where they claimed that, they didn't actually address anyone's questions or concerns. They didn't mention the naked male. They didn't mention that staff branded it as discriminatory. They didn't mention their position on transgenders using and switching and changing facilities as they please, right? So they didn't answer anything. So I thought, you know what, enough is enough. I've been doing protests all over the country at different universities, from Manchester to Swansea, etc. And I wanted to organise a protest in Norwich, but I didn't want to just organise one. I wanted to keep it going, and potentially we can create some change here, because I do know that from first-hand experience that direct action works. So we've organised, this will be our 5th one this month on 14th of September. We've organised 4 so far, 1 more to come, protests at the University of East Anglia. We've done 2 on the actual campus, and we've done the rest, and we're doing this one in Norwich City, because we want to wake people up to it. We want to let people know what's going on. We want to get the numbers, and then we want to bring it to the sports park, show them that the locals are not happy with this, and the locals aren't happy with this, right? So Clive Lewis attended the counter-protest to us. This was at the last demonstration. He attended the counter-protest.
And this is all about the trans issue in the changing rooms, or is it about more broader issues?
Immigration, yeah.
Funny thing is, we Students Against Tyranny, we haven't done many protests around immigration. We've talked about it a lot, but we've tried to steer clear of doing protests around that. We do that in our own individual capacity. That protest there that we organised had nothing to do with immigration. And this is what's so interesting about it, right? So we, what was it? So he attended the last counter protest. He was online on Twitter calling us all far right and fascist, the same old tactics that they always use to silence opposition, right? And they all claimed in their poster that this was about being that our protest was about being anti-immigration. They claimed, everyone remembers the Southport riots, the riots that ripped through Sunderland, Hartlepool, which never should have happened, right? You can understand people's anger, but they never should have happened. Those they claimed that that was our aim, was to cause a massive riot and set fire to the mosques. I don't know where they got that from, and Clive Lewis was part of that. He was kind of stirring the same pot, saying that we were there to cause division, to cause violence, and that we were far right. Yeah. So I've ambushed him once before. This was the second time we wanted to do it. And this is the thing. They were holding a public meeting about our demonstration, but we weren't invited. So they had this public meeting where they said everybody's welcome. This was Stand Up to Racism and Socialist Workers' Party. Everyone is welcome. So we turned up to go in, and we wanted to hear what they were saying. We were told we're not allowed in, and then we bumped into Clive Lewis. And we started a little conversation with him. It was actually Glenn who first started debating him, and asking him why he thinks we're all far right. So like I've seen people on, it was on GB News. There was two individuals who said that.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. They said, what was it they said? That we were trying to do it for clicks and likes and stuff like that. No, we wanted to doorstep him to put pressure on him and to respond to the allegations that he's spreading online that we're far right, when that is not the truth at all.
Do they accuse you, James, of being with the EDL, which of course hasn't existed since 2015? I hear that quite a lot.
Not this time. They're saying I'm associated with the EDL. Right. Because that's quite a quick shutdown tactic, isn't it?
Okay, yeah. So then I guess, how did you feel after his response there, saying that you are far right? How would you respond to that now, were he here today?
It reminds me of the gender thing quite a lot, because with the gender thing, they can't define what a woman is. And it seems they struggle these days to define what far right was. Back in the day, real Nazis, real skinheads, you would be running the other way down the street. You would be running, right? Nazis are a very small minority in this country, but they consider 99% of the UK Nazis, right? Like, I'll give you an example. I think it's 6 in 10 people in Britain right now want the rate of immigration to be slowed down or lowered. Yeah. 6 in 10. According to his definition that he just gave there, that means 60% of the UK are Nazis.
So, Alex, there's been a lot of polling coming out lately showing that immigration is now the number one topic in the UK. It's the number one concern for most people, and it's a fair concern. I mean, Clive Lewis is definitely more on the left of the Labour Party. Have you received any support at all from anybody on the left for anything, any part of your protest or your right to protest, or anything from the university at all in that respect?
No, previously we've had a lot of women who would consider themselves left-wing, who believe in climate change and that kind of stuff, who are the feminists, and they do kind of agree with us on this issue, which is good. But the problem is they don't want to publicly support us, because even if they believe in climate change and all the other stuff that typically categorizes them as left wing, if they support us on this one issue, they are immediately Nazis.
Yeah.
And they're kind of tarnished by this guilt. What was it? Guilt by association.
Well, indeed, yeah. But Chloe, I'm wondering, because you've spoken about this in the past, what James says about the bias that is undoubtedly present in these institutions, the university and educational establishment, it strikes me that actually to have the views of, as James says, quite rightly, 6 in 10 people in the country, for that to be beyond the pale, I mean, it doesn't speak very highly of the direction our education system's going in, does it?
No, I mean, our education system is in a complete bind at the moment. I mean, question, what is the purpose of universities? The purpose of universities is that you go there to learn, to debate with people, to explore ideas, and specifically to explore ideas that you disagree with, become better debaters, become better at critical thinking and all the rest of it. And the way I see it going at the moment is that the majority of students that go into universities come out being worse at those skills than when they started. So it's like, well, what is the point anymore? They are just breeding grounds for woke ideology, where people become it seems as though, completely detached from the reality of how normal people in this country think. They live in this left-wing bubble where they think that anyone who is concerned about immigration is a Nazi, when the reality is that most people in the country, most normal people who are not extreme and have perfectly reasonable grievances and concerns, they do think that immigration is a problem that we need to tackle. And so it just makes their rhetoric very divisive and detached from reality, and it makes it more difficult for them to engage when they re-enter the real world, to engage in proper debate with people. And I think university campuses are a very hostile place for people on the right to be, because when you're an ordinary individual at home, okay, someone might come after you on Facebook or on Twitter, or X as we call it now, whatever, if they disagree with you. But when you're at university and everybody lives super in close proximity to each other, you are surrounded in the building that you live in and in, you know, the 1 mile radius around you by people who hate you, right? That then becomes a personal safety risk to you, knowing that there are tons of people around you who think that you are a Nazi, who, you know, you might fear are going to harm you in some way, or, you know, at least come and start a really scary confrontation with you in the street. So yeah, I think it's a horrendous direction our universities are going in. I was wondering, before you go, James, if you could talk about, you mentioned to me that there was an event that the UEA organised for year 10s that white children were not allowed to attend.
Is that the
University
of East Anglia? Right, yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I did want to kind of touch on a point that you said there about the education system.
Go for it.
There's a lot of things that are going on in the education system, and people aren't as aware about what, like, the kind of ins and outs of it. So everyone who's watching, I just want to kind of encourage you and nudge you to kind of research some of these topics, right? So everyone's hearing about decolonization. Of course, that's a really important topic, but there's a few other things as well. So you've got the Race Equality Charter and you've got the Athena Swan Charter. The Race Equality Charter, like the Athena Swan Charter, the Athena Swan Charter just focus on gender, right? Rewards universities who perpetuate a racial or gender kind of neutral environment, right? So that's one thing. And also as well, Confucius Institutes, which are tied with the Chinese Communist Party and the United Front Work Department, which are now taking over our British academia. And then you've also got universities like the University of Edinburgh, which is funded by the People's Liberation Army, while they're decolonising Robert Louis Stevenson for perpetuating a few colonial stereotypes. Seems like they're a bit of a hypocrite there. But there's quite a few things to research there. So I highly recommend just look into the education system. It's an absolute mess at the moment and needs a complete overhaul. In regards to the University of East Anglia, right? So they did an event for year 10s called Uni Unlocked. And it's basically an event for year 10s to experience kind of a taster of student life. And they would do this by staying in student flats for the year 10s, participating in sports clubs and society taster sessions, and just getting an overall kind of feeling of what it's going to be like when they join university, right? It's kind of like a taster session. And if you go on their website, Uni Unlocked, have a look at the eligibility criteria. It stipulates every race, every ethnicity is welcome, apart from white people. So if you're a white year 10, you're not welcome at this event for year 10s, right? And obviously they're going to claim that this is like female-only engineering clubs where they're trying to boost diversity uptake in a particular profession. It's a load of nonsense, because if you look at the statistics, the majority white kids are entering into university at a disproportionately lower rate than every other ethnicity, especially those from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds. So we don't need to support disadvantaged groups. If we do, it's actually white kids. But no, they're being told white kids aren't allowed to attend this event. There's no excuse for it other than clear racism, clear anti-white hatred. And so they're doing this at the UEA with the Uni Unlocked event, anti-white discrimination, and then they're also doing allowing men into the female changing rooms. This isn't just happening at the UEA, it's happening at every university across the UK. Look at the University of Liverpool. The University of Liverpool is now teaching that whiteness and heterosexuality are the problem. That's what the history departments are teaching. So yeah, it's a nightmare, isn't it?
One of our comments says, actually, I don't identify as white anymore. So that's Phil on YouTube's way of getting around all of this. But Eunice, on that point that James mentioned there firstly, if you've got any comments on what Clive Lewis had to say and his response to James, but secondly, the question around, because the Labour Party actually dropped the Tory free speech bill, which was supposed to protect speech on university campuses, and they dropped it allegedly because of the fact that they knew that it would be a sore point for the Chinese communists. Right. So we're starting to see that actually come into the fore. And I assume, Eunice, also, it would be a sticking point, dare I say, for the Iranian regime too.
No, 100%. And I agree with everything that your guest said, because universities, as Chloe mentioned before, used to be the hub for free thinking and for debate. And now what we have is an indoctrination institution where people go in there and they get indoctrinated instead of educated, which is the opposite of education. And I mentioned this before to you, but I actually have two different things that I want to say about this. First thing is that I had a similar experience to your guests, where I posted about the Black Lives Matter protests whilst I was in university during my master's degree, and then my university sent me an email saying, oh, we heard you was racist on your social media. And I was like, well, how was I racist? I was just saying that the Black Lives Matter movement, they do not have the right to go and vandalize statues of Churchill, and they have no right to beat people up and set buildings on fire. That's not a racist comment, right? If you want to protest peacefully. Right? And then the second thing I wanted to say about this is that I actually used to work for a year as a teacher, and I used to teach politics and economics at Chelsea Academy right before I started my career as a political analyst. And the first ever video I made is that I made a long video about Trump, and then I made another video, and my video started becoming gathering momentum on in school, and then the students found my videos and then they started sharing it around, in the school. And I had a meeting with the people at school. They were like, look, Eunice, you cannot have a political opinion because you work in this school. And I was like, well, what do you mean? They were like, no, sorry, this is our policy. And I was like, look, there are people like Jordan Peterson that work for Harvard University, and they're allowed to be on social media and give their opinions. Like, what makes you so special that, at Chelsea Academy, I cannot have my own political opinion online? So anyway, they were like, no, look, you have to make a decision. You either want to work here or you pursue your social media stuff. And I chose that I'm going to pursue my social media stuff. But that's the disparity there is, because I'm quite right-leaning. I feel like if I was...
Oh, really? I had no idea, Eunice. You surprised me.
Yeah, no, seriously. And yeah, I was working as a teacher for a year now. And still to this day, I see some of my students down the road, because the Chelsea Academy is literally just down the road from where I live.
Well, I bet if you put up a video supporting Joe Biden, they wouldn't have called you into the
exactly. And this is the thing. Another thing I wanted to say is that, look, as soon as I walked in the school, there was this huge pride flag. And I always thought to myself, why do we need this huge pride flag as soon as we walk into the building? What purpose does it have, And I always wanted to mention these things, because I also made videos about LGBTQ, about Trump, about, all these different things. And I do truly believe, because of my political stance, they were like, you either have to use your social media or you have to work here. And I chose, I'm going to follow my passion. But it's just crazy. If I made a video saying, oh, yes, there's 25 different genders, and yeah, immigration is great, and yeah, political correctness, and, they wouldn't have said nothing. But because of the stances I took, they gave me an ultimatum. And that's just not okay at all. And we're going in the wrong direction. As your guest said, there's no more debate anymore. Everyone has to fall in line. Everyone can't question anything. You cannot question immigration. You cannot question LGBTQ. You cannot question anything that goes against the mainstream narrative. And that's wrong, and that's indoctrination. That's not education.
James, just to bring that conversation to an end then, what would you've set up Students Against Tyranny. Now, what would your message be to students who are potentially at university or going to university who are worried about all of this and are fearful? Because we hear this so often on Reasoned, that people get in touch and they say, I agree with everything you say, but I'm absolutely terrified to actually say it because I'm worried about me being marked down. Some responses to that say, well, you shouldn't give up your principles for a mark on a test paper, but then you give up career opportunities. So it's a hard one to actually decide what you're going to do about that conundrum. So what would your message be to people who are watching who say, you know, these lads and lass speak sense, and I wish I could say it too?
Listen, I know it's difficult, right? So, like, from what we've started here, I've lost my university education. I'm now £60,000 in debt, and I struggle to get a job in most fields, and so I have to focus on this. And sometimes, you know, I'm living on £400 a month. So I understand it's difficult, right? And I understand the amount you give up to speak the truth. But if you don't speak the truth, the future we're heading down is a far, far worse. It's hard to kind of saying what I want to say and putting it into words and into context. But what I'm saying is that the truth is always worth it. And it doesn't matter what you give up. The future is far, far, far worse if you don't speak up than it is if you stay quiet, right? I know if you speak out now, you may lose future job prospects and future career, but if we're being real, the direction the UK is heading down, I don't think many people have a future career-wise anyway. We're most going to be imprisoned, shoved into FEMA camps, and God knows what else they have planned for us. So all I've got to say is the future's always worth it. Students Against Tyranny exists for this sole reason, right? We provide legal representation to students who are struggling in university, are being kicked out, are being expelled. We do protests for those students as well. We've built a little community, so come join us, right? And you can join us. We're like, if you go on our website, you can join completely free, right? We don't charge
Which
money.
is what?
studentsagainsttyranny.com/join. Just join completely free. We'll get you involved. We'll get you into the group chats. And if you can as well, come down on the 14th of September. Because I know all of you, right? If you're watching and you're young, I know how much you like to drink, right? So after we've done our demonstration, we go out to Norwich Town and we get absolutely hammered. So come down 14th of September, 1 p.m, Gentleman's Walk as well. That's going to be a fantastic day. We're expecting 200 people this time. So if you can be there, please be there. Yeah, that's all I got to say. You know, truth's always worth it.
Absolutely. Well, James, thank you very much for giving us that walkthrough of Clive Lewis being a complete and utter rotten arse. And good luck with everything, because I agree with the values of Students Against Tyranny, and we must stand against tyranny because there's a hell of a lot of it, folks. Right. Thank you again, James. Speak soon. Now, folks, the conundrum there, I think, is quite clear, right? But there is a story that leads neatly. So if you've got any thoughts right now, hold on to them, because there is a relevant topic that I want to dissect, which is this topic around this polling that's been conducted. And it's conducted quite regularly. It's been conducted throughout the last few decades at least, talking about the pride in the country and whether or not pride in Britain is on the up or on the down. And it's never been as down as it is now. And it's not been obvious, actually, that there is a downward trajectory, but there very much is. And over the last decade, it's plummeted. And a report has actually found that fewer people now think somebody born in the UK is truly British as well. So there are a whole host of things. And the reason I say this is relevant is actually because I wonder if, you know, it will be primarily the young generation that don't feel pride in their country. And that's an issue. So what I was really struck by, and that's the polling there. So you can see the drop, by the way, folks, right? At 1995, 83%, 2003, 82% pride, 2013, up to 86% pride. And then in 2023, a drop all the way to 64% pride in Britain's history. So Rafe Heidelman-Q, a historian and a royalist, he had this to say on it, and I thought it summed it up really quite nice before I get your thoughts on it.
That's been taking place for decades. And this is a very interesting report. We need to understand what's going on. This is a very respected survey that's been taking place for decades. And what's remarkable is that pride in British history has been stable for decades until this past decade. So in the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, it was over 80%. It's now dropped dramatically by 22% to 64%. And why is that? Well, it's no coincidence that it's been in the last decade that we have seen the supremacy of woke ideology through all of our institutions, particularly our schools, our universities, the media, and our cultural institutions like museums and so forth. And so essentially we've seen ideological subversion happening. And this is not the only survey to show that, actually. We have the most radically left-wing youth in history. They hold views that are totally out of kilter with those who are even 10 or 15 years older. We've seen a war on our history. We've seen our achievements undermined. We've seen our great heroes from Churchill to Nelson to David Hume unfairly besmirched. And we've seen at the same time, of course, another fundamental issue. Essentially, there's a pincer movement on British history and culture and identity. One is ideological subversion from woke ideology. The other one, of course, is mass immigration, the importation of millions of people into this country who understandably don't have any cultural affinity, don't have any historical knowledge of this country, but all they see around them, all the messaging they're getting from the media, from the institutions, is one of unrelenting negativity about Britain's past.
And that's a really good point that Rafe makes, Alex, because I saw there's a video going around of two migrants speaking to an English fella in what looks like a factory warehouse. And he says, that England's not a racist country. And he's told by these two people that it is a racist country. And my view on that was, well, why don't you sod the hell off then? But this is the narrative that young people are hearing from people like that. And Rafe is right, mass migration on an unprecedented scale that we've never ever seen before. And as Jill has just pointed out on YouTube, we can't even fly our own flag. How can we possibly be proud? Let's not forget, at the protest, someone was arrested for flying this flag of St. George outside a mosque. I mean, is that a crime?
Yeah, it's shocking stuff, isn't it? And I don't think anyone would really be that surprised to see that number today, that 63%. I think people have felt that the British identity has been under attack for the last decade. Well, I can certainly feel like it has been for the last decade, at least, been under a massive amount of attack by the left. The woke ideology has gone absolutely wild, but it's infiltrated institutions right to the highest level. We look at things from the National Trust coming out, basically saying that whiteness is bad, that British history is bad.
Yeah, the countryside is bad as well.
Countryside is bad, going on hikes is racist, all this nonsense. And of course, you're going to start getting a generation of young people who start to feel like sticking up for British culture is something they shouldn't do. It's just how subversion works, it's how manipulation works. The second part I'd say that Rafe nailed is the mass importing of illegal immigrants and legal immigrants from countries that do not like what our country stands for. This is a fact. There's many of them that come here for the opportunities but hate our culture. They hate Britain very, very deeply. They think our country is racist because their governments have told them that, and the people around them have told them that, and them in their certain cultural spheres have been told that. They bring that here. They penetrate the workforce. They have children. They teach their children that. That is how this works. So I will not be surprised in 2030, the next decade, you see that number hitting below the 50% mark for the very first time.
Yeah.
Very sad truth, unless we start fighting back.
Chloe, before I go to Eunice, Stephen says, who is a friend of the show, thank you for joining us again, Stephen. If my teenage kids and their peers are anything to go by, this might, thankfully, be changing. Are you as optimistic as Stephen is?
Yeah. Maybe not. I mean, Stephen's probably brought up his kids well. I feel like the young generation is definitely going the wrong way, especially with what's going on at universities, as we've just discussed with James, where they're being indoctrinated. So I think there are a couple of things going on here that's resulting in this decline in pride in this country. And on the one hand, it is these people who feel like Britain's got a racist past. This is what they're told at universities. This is what they're told by everyone on the left. They make it out as if Britain is the only country in the world that ever had slaves. Spoiler alert, pretty much every country had slaves, and we were the ones who actually decided to bring that to an end. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, I think, people look at this country now and they see it going in a downward trajectory, right? It used to be the case that this country was, say, a bastion of free speech, and we could say, yeah, we're really proud that our grandfathers in World War II, they gave us these amazing freedoms that we have today, and they gave us this economically prosperous country that we have today that's more prosperous than the other countries around the world. But then, free speech is going down the drain. People are being locked up in prison, as you say, for flying a St. George's flag. Our economy seems to be going to shit. You can't get a hospital appointment, you can't get a school place for your child. Nothing seems to work in this country. We've got a cost of living crisis. Meanwhile, people in places like Dubai with no democracy seem to be doing a heck of a lot better than us and have safer streets than ours. So you can kind of see why pride in Britain is declining.
But Eunice, how do we turn this around?
Quickly,
sorry, Alex, go on, Alex.
Before I hand it over to Eunice, but I thought Chloe hit on something really important there. Even on the right, pride is declining in our country. And I think that we should also bear that in mind. We are also less proud of Britain. I'm less proud of Britain today, not of our whole history, but of our recent history, for certainly sure.
Yep.
Sorry, Eunice, over to you.
Yeah, so I feel like the woke mind virus really started infiltrating our universities and our schools around 2014. And the chart shows ever since 2013, it's gone on a rapid, decrease. And I always say to people, like, London is not the same as it used to be. Like, I remember going out, like, back in 2015, and it was just so lively. So many people were out. It was just fun, And now sometimes you go out like to central London and Mayfair and Chelsea. It's like a ghost town on a Saturday night. And I'm like, where is all the people? And probably all the people have left. This is what I mean. Like, everyone's left to go to Dubai or to America. London and UK is not where it used to be. And maybe there's several different reasons for that. I don't know, maybe COVID, maybe after Brexit, or maybe the fact that all the rich people have left because crime is so high now. Maybe the woke mind virus. All of these things are playing into the hands of why the pride in this country is going down. But at the end of the day, I feel like the whole thing is a lie. Because yes, has Britain done bad things in the past? Yes, it has. But has it done also great things? Yes, it has. And the reason why the United Kingdom was a superpower 150 years ago is because they kick-started world trade. And yeah, did they have slaves? Yes, they did. But did they end slavery? Yes, they did also. So you cannot look at the dark part of history only. You have to look at the positives that also United Kingdom done. And every single civilization and every single empire done some good things and they done some bad things. But then the problem with the woke mind virus is that it only focuses on the bad things. And I just don't think that's okay. They don't talk about the fact that, in Africa, there's more slaves today than there was at the height of the transatlantic slave trade. They don't talk about the fact that there was Africans selling their own people into slavery, the kings and the queens of Africa, selling their own people to slavery to countries like Britain and America, right? And I always said this, look, if you care so much about slavery, don't protest it here in this country. We don't have a racism problem here. Go and save the slaves in South Sudan and in Somalia, because there's millions of them, yeah? So, as I said, I think the pride in the West has gone down. So I don't think it's just the United Kingdom. I even think the same thing is happening in America. And Western Europe. And the only way we can combat this is to, first of all, strengthen our economy. As I said, the West is collapsing. The war on the West, and every single empire collapses with time. The Roman Empire, and I truly believe the West is on a decline. And I don't think that's a joke. Unless we have strong leadership, we can revive our economy. Otherwise, countries like China, like Dubai, even Saudi Arabia, they will take over in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah. Some of the comments there, Deborah says, if enough people stand up, things will change. We need a large, peaceful protest to show we cannot be silenced by Starmer. And that's what James was hinting earlier on actual action. And Lee says, I have no children, but I feel sorry for those who have. If we don't fight now, they will have a bigger fight later. And lots of people encouraging us to keep saying it as it is, because enough people aren't. And Paul said on Facebook earlier, I've just lost the comment, that the fact that we are all scared to say what we think is a sign of decline in and of itself, which is true. But, this country, as Eunice said, lifted a whole host of people, millions and millions that I wouldn't be able to measure it, out of the most abject poverty through, as he mentioned, the international trade, through setting up international trade. Abolishing the slave trade. We did that at vast expense to the taxpayers of this country. We are a great country with a great history. My grandfather, a working class lad who was down the pits, went off to fight in South Korea in the Korean War to actually stand up for the values that the United Kingdom's flag represents. Freedom from tyranny, freedom from oppression, freedom to, dare I say, speak your mind against tyrants like those in the north of Korea. And I feel immense pride when I think of my grandfather going out and doing that. And he had immense pride in doing that under the banner of the United Kingdom. And I find it immensely sad and deeply troubling that there are so many who actually think you needn't have bothered. The United Kingdom should just pack up and go home. That we might as well just become, I don't know, a citadel of Black Lives Matter and wave their flag and just say, we're Antifa as a nation. And I'm not going to accept that. They're going to have to put me in a gulag. They're going to have to put a bullet through my skull because I ain't going to accept that. Eunice has just disappeared. Oh dear. He's vehemently disagreed with what I had to say. That's what it is. Right. So then the other issue, Eunice is back. He didn't disagree with what I had to say.
Can I say something quickly to your point, by the way, Darren? They said the Roman Empire fell not because of outside aggression. It fell because of the enemy from within. And the woke mind virus and the rise of Islamism is the enemy from within. And I think great civilizations and great empires fall when the people from within it start, going against the narrative. And it's basically the woke mind virus. The woke mind virus is the enemy from within. So we have to defeat it, because I don't think every country falls not because of external aggression. I truly believe that it's only from within that countries fall. And what's happening right now is that we have a lot of enemy from within, and that could be to some extent through mass immigration from countries that hate us. And they obviously come to this country, they don't like our values, and they try to take us down. But also we have the stereotypical white liberals that think they know so well, and everything's so exotic, and they are not brave enough to stand up. And that is a combination of the woke mind virus and weakness and the rise of extreme ideologies that take a society down. And I think we should battle that.
A quick history lesson. We have someone in the comments here who's using Hebrew. I think the name is Shay the Great in Hebrew, and he said the Crusaders. He was criticizing Britain just because we're talking about history, and I think it's a beautiful time to talk about this. Saying the Crusaders killed all the Jews of Jerusalem, all of them. Well, just an interesting part. Anyone who reads about what the Jews in Jerusalem actually fought with the Muslims on that side of the battle in that period of time. Hence why during the Crusades many Jews were killed, because they actually sided with the Muslim majority in Jerusalem at the time. So I thought I'd just give you a quick history lesson there as to why that happened. Interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's undoubtedly true that the West is collapsing, but we just have to do something about it and get off our asses, really. With
the West collapsing, the silent majority in this country needs to stop being silent, and they need to be clever about how they talk about it, because the government will weaponize the law against them. But if you start talking about immigration more openly, and provided you don't say anything racist, which you shouldn't say, or incite violence against people, this conversation will get better, and we will change things, because politicians only act when they hear it's an important thing to people. Hopefully we'll see someone like Robert Jenrick in the Conservative Party be put forward, and you'll see the likes of Nigel Farage in Reform, and this will become a top agenda item for the right, at least for the foreseeable future. I really do hope that we can still turn the tide.
Well, that leads us nicely onto this topic, because Priti Patel is out. Prit didn't stick. Top Tory tossed off, so to speak. Priti Patel is out of the leadership race for that's the leadership of the Conservative and Unionist Party, and the votes were as follows. If you aren't already aware. So, Robert Jenrick got 28 MPs of the Conservative Parliamentary Party supporting him, Kemi Badenoch on 22, James Cleverly on 21, Tom Tugendhat on 17, Mel Stride on 16, Priti Patel on 14. And I'll just very briefly give you my take on each of those. So starting from the top, Robert Jenrick, great immigration minister. I think that he has said all the right things since he left City Con. Since he, good hell would all, freeze over. I would actually leave Britain if that happened. But Rishi Sunak, I meant to say. Robert Jenrick, as immigration minister, said lots of great things, but he also said lots of great things outside of office, and I like that and I respect that. And he was also, though, to add a caveat to that, he was brought in under David Cameron as a sort of Cameroon consensus conservative. So I worry about whether or not he's just telling us and what we want to hear and doesn't actually believe it. But I could be wrong. I've met him. He's a very nice man. I'm not doubting his integrity, but we heard this from other politicians in the Conservative Party in the past, 2010, 2015, 2017, 2019, and it didn't work out that way. Kemi Badenoch, I can say exactly the same thing that I think about Robert Jenrick. I think Kemi Badenoch has said some really great things. She said she's not worried about the 5 MPs in the Reform Party. She said, hang on a minute, I'm worried about the MPs that have been elected through religious sectarianism, through Islamism, elected into the British Parliament. I'm worried about that. And she stood up and said that. I think that's brave for all the reasons that we've just been talking about throughout this stream. James Cleverly, I used to like him. Useless Home Secretary, need I say any more? Tom Tugendhat, wetter than an otter's pocket. Mel Stride, well, good Lord. He's wetter than the deepest, darkest depths. If he can fish out the Bayesian whilst he's down there. Priti Patel. Well, Priti Patel was the Home Secretary that presided over, and she supported me during my Electoral Commission court case and throughout Brexit. She was great, but she did preside over the record migration that we've seen in this country, and she also said she wouldn't be willing to leave the ECHR, and I think that ultimately would have been what spooked the horses of the Tory Parliamentary Party, who are getting lots of angry emails, who almost lost their seats, who are saying, I cannot vote for someone that has those views at this time. We need radical change as a Conservative Party because we're facing an existential moment. And I'm speaking in the third person there. I am not speaking as a Conservative. But anyway, that's my take on all of those. Chloe, what's yours?
Well, I mean, just on that point about the ECHR, I mean, James Cleverly said that he's not willing to leave the ECHR, but he seems to have done quite well in this. Obviously not at the top, but he's come third. I'm really surprised, to be honest, that Priti Patel did so badly. I mean, she's quite a big name. She's pretty well known. I'm going to be honest. I have absolutely no clue about Mel Stride. I barely even heard the name before the leadership contest. I mean, who is this guy? To see him do even better than Priti Patel, I mean, that's pretty embarrassing for her. I think she comes across as quite a strong woman, quite similar to Suella Braverman in that sense, in that she seems like she's a tough cookie and that she's someone who wants to take take strong action and stand by her word. However, her record in office just clearly didn't show that, because she allowed such huge numbers of immigration to come in, of migrants to come in, and people are not going to forgive her for that. I think these are votes that have happened within the from MPs. This has not gone to the membership, and we know especially from the last leadership election that there is often a big disparity between what the membership thinks and what the MPs think. So it will be interesting to see who the MPs choose as their top two, and will they choose that selfishly, or will they choose on the basis of what they think the membership is going to like? I mean, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think will be who the membership think should be leader. Well,
I can tell you that right now, because Conservative Home did some polling on it, and Kemi Badenoch is way ahead on 34%. Robert Jenrick is on 18%, Tom Tugendhat 13%, James Cleverly 11%, Priti Patel way down on 7%, and Mel Stride, well, he's so backbench he's fallen off. So that's where they are.
Yeah,
Alex,
I mean, I think that this... Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Chloe, go ahead.
Well, I think that this shows that the actual membership, they are absolutely desperate for a leader with some personality. They are so bored
and principle.
of people like... Yeah, they are so bored of people who are spineless and have no backbone and don't have the tenacity to stand by their word regardless of what the media thinks of them. Right. And I think people are so fed up of Rishi Sunak being so spineless that they want someone who seems like they've got a bit of fire. And, maybe Robert Jenrick, he's got quite strong views on immigration, which is good, but I don't think he comes across as the kind of fiery, strong guy who's going to stand by his word no matter what anybody says about him. And that's why Kemi Badenoch is doing so well in this poll. But I mean, the difference between, sure, in terms of placement, there's not a huge difference, but in terms of percentages between Kemi and Robert Jenrick there's clearly a huge disparity between how MPs think and how the membership think and how the wider public think. And this has been a problem for years and years and years. This is why we've got a crisis with our democracy, is because people feel like MPs do not think like them at all. This was the case with Brexit, where you had MPs, the makeup there in terms of percentages, like 3/4 of MPs being pro-Remain, causing huge mistrust in democracy in this country.
Alex, before I come to you, Eunice, I saw some polling alongside this kind of thing where the Conservative Party members were actually asked if they'd vote for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, and Reform voters and members were asked the same question. Reform voters overwhelmingly said that they would support Donald J. Trump. Now, Conservative Party, they said that they would vote for Kamala Harris overwhelmingly. So do you think actually we're talking about something that's completely bloody irrelevant, and that actually we should just accept that the Conservative Party's a dead duck and support reform?
Yeah. Exactly, 100%. And that's the uni party for you. The Conservatives and Labour are just different sides to the same coin. And I don't believe Conservatives are actually conservative anymore. They're actually at best centrists or even centre-left. Because I can't really distinguish between them and Labour. Yeah, Labour is slightly to the left, and they say, what's the difference between Conservatives and Labour? Nothing. They'll both take us to the same destination, but Labour will take us there quicker. And I think Reform is just the only centre-right party in this country that actually has conservative values. And I truly believe if the Conservatives don't make a deal with Nigel Farage and Reform, either to join the two parties together or for Reform to be able to overtake the Conservatives, because I truly don't see how the Conservatives can win in the near future. I'm talking about the next 10, 15 years. So we either going to have Labour for the next 10, 15, 20 years, or Reform needs to overtake the Conservatives. And I mean, look, this is about the survival of the Conservative Party. Because I think the Conservative Party is decimated completely, and they need to make a deal with Nigel Farage and Reform, either make him the Prime Minister and the leader. And I think because of the egos and because of the deep state that's in the Conservative Party, they will never do such a thing, and that's to their own demise. If the Conservatives had any smart political strategists and advisors, I would say to them, look, go and make a deal with Reform. Because they took about 45% of your vote in the last election. And if you actually added the vote of the Conservatives and Reform together, the country is more right-wing than left-wing. Because if you add the votes of the Conservatives and Reform, you would get about 10.5 million. Whereas Labour only got 9. So they need to make a deal with Reform if they want to win in the next election, for sure.
Alex, before I come to you, I'm just going to read out some comments. So just to include people. So Always Pooh says, vote the Care Bears for the Tory leadership. I assume that's meant with a sort of contempt. Deborah says, Pretty lied about migration, not one to trust. Louis says, I'd settle for SpongeBob. Stephen says, but Suella for me. Well, Stephen, I'm afraid to tell you, Suella isn't Stanton. She dropped out because she knew that there would be precious little support for her in the parliamentary party. So does that tell you everything you need to know about the makeup of that parliamentary party? Let me know in the comment section. Nick says, nobody cares about the Tories anymore. They are a dead party with no moral compass. Same as Labour. So all the comments basically saying that actually, I don't care about the Conservative Party. So it does show, and obviously this is a sample of people who are, I assume the majority of people in this chat will have voted for Reform, as actually the majority of people in this panel did, if not all of us. I can't remember, to be honest. And actually, I think Chloe was busy at some rowing convention or something like that.
I did vote.
No, you did. Oh, I thought you were away. I think there was a conversation about whether or not you would be able to. But Alex,
I think it was for London Mayor. I wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alex, where are you at on this? Because you are a supporter. You're no longer a member of the Conservative Party. And does it really matter? I mean, would it not be better if they just chose Mel Stride and just accepted death?
Oh, that would be fun, wouldn't it? I'd love that. No, I mean, the reality is it does matter. It matters for so many reasons, and it matters who the leader is for the Conservative Party. The first is that they are the official opposition. So whatever they say, we saw today Rishi Sunak in the House of Commons, that's what the media plays. And what the media plays is what you hear on your TVs, and what you hear on your TVs influences the way you vote. So it certainly does matter whoever the leader of the Tories is. I'll say this about Kemi Badenoch before everyone gets super excited about her. In 2018, she was in the House of Commons celebrating the lift of the visa cap, saying that we need to bring in more migrants into the country. And be careful who you throw your support behind, because I don't believe she has any strong stance on anything. She's got great rhetoric, but she's a performer. She's a little bit like Boris. If anyone felt tarnished by Boris, he said all the right things and was a great performer, but actually delivered so little in government. And I feel like she's more of the same. Jenrick, I have a little bit more respect for. He's actually coming out with relatively tough policies, and once you make those kinds of statements, it's hard to come back from them, and which is why Kemi's not making them. She refuses to withdraw from the ECHR. She's not putting any commitments, any cap on immigration, and I think it's going to come down to those two. But I think the surprise this audience might be interested in is who is going to be the One Nation Tory at the end of it. And I think we're underestimating the power of Tom Tugendhat or James Cleverly. I think either of those guys can break through the right wing, in the hope that Kemi and Robert split the right wing vote, and the same way that Rishi Sunak got in, wins by default.
I agree.
That's the case.
Because if you look at it, James Cleverly, 21 votes, just one vote behind who the members reportedly want in this poll. Now, I'm surprised actually by how well James did, and I've spoken to a few Tory spads and people like that, and they've all said that they're surprised by how well James did actually within the parliamentary party. So I was about to say, is he the dark horse? But then I'm going to be accused of being racist or something, aren't I? You know what I mean?
He is the dark horse in the competition, and I actually think he's going to win. And I think he's going to win because the plan all along is for the One Nation Tories all to come here, look like they're weak, and then come out strong at the end. And that's what they always do. That's how the One Nation Tories have managed to win Tory leadership after Tory leadership election, which is by making it look like one candidate's going to win. They did this with Boris and Theresa May, and then actually their candidate ends up winning overall. And I think Cleverly, or more likely to be Cleverly than anyone else.
Dufferfish says, Suella to reform. Facehugger says, Starmer is a commie. Well, he's certainly shown his authoritarian streak. Sean says, I think reform needs to selectively take on Tory MPs to win over some die-hard Conservative voters.
It's not going to happen.
Paul said,
It's not going to happen. Look, Tory MPs are not going to leave the Conservative Party. Even the most staunchly right-wing ones are not going to do that, because many Tories, that you speak to actually a lot of political people, and Darren, I know you speak to a lot of them too, they believe reform is going to implode. That is their long game. They want to wait long enough for reform to implode as a party, a little bit like how UKIP did, and they expect that will happen. They really do believe that's going to happen. Whether you guys believe it or not is a different story, but they believe the Tories will be the last right-wing party standing.
Two things on that. The Tory party thinks that what will happen is what happened to UKIP, where they fought like rats in a sack. They couldn't get party discipline together. They think the same thing's going to happen with reform. They think that Nigel, his ego is far too big for him to actually give anyone a bite at the cherry. And actually, it's a one-man band and isn't going to amount to anything. I hope with every fibre of my being that they're wrong on that. I think they are wrong on that. But then secondly, I actually don't know if I care, for one, about the whether or not actually the Conservative Party survives, because I am deeply angry and betrayed by the fact that I campaigned heart and soul for the party in 2019, only to be given a diet of net zero nonsense and all these other things. And the net zero nonsense actually led to this, which is what Ed Miliband has done. Now, there's a lot of text, I realise, but I'll read some of it out. Ed Miliband has just announced that actually, he said, quick explainer, the Tories last year were offered bids for renewable energy. The Tories said that actually the price that they were offering per kilowatt hour or whatever else, that actually that price that they were being offered by industry was too low and that they weren't willing to make it up with subsidy. So they stalled it for another year. So that year is obviously this year. Now, the Labour Party, Ed Miliband, who is the disciple of Greta and Green Extreme in the most extreme way you can possibly imagine. And he said, oh, goody, goody. What I'll do is I'll, pop this onto the bills of those paying for energy, so energy bill payers, pop it on, maybe a fiddle about with some taxes whilst I'm giving 11 billion quid away in foreign climate aid. Well, I can turn round to the nation and say, look what we've managed to do. We've got all these new green wind farms being built and solar panels, solar panels in Costa del Britain and wind farms that were having to subsidise at the price of goodness only knows what. Even Croesus would blush at the price we're being asked to fork over to actually subsidise these great big windmills. And Ed Miliband's saying it's a good thing. Well, Net Zero Watch point out that actually the price for new electricity from offshore wind has actually risen in this latest round to £82 and the current prices, and that's actually a significant 58% increase since the previous successful auction, which was in 2022. And higher prices will lead to higher household bills, and the results raise the already astronomical price tag of meeting Miliband's unrealistic target to decarbonise the power grid by 2030, which is, to be perfectly clear, complete and utter fucking lunacy. And they also point out that a loophole in government contracts could actually end up costing households up to £180 million a year. So not only are the Labour Party taking away pensioners' winter fuel allowance, they're also making energy unnecessarily expensive, decarbonising the grid, which won't happen, by the way, but attempting to do it by 2030, which will cause great pain and expense, and it'll pop that straight on to your bills, as it will this latest funding round for subsidising green energy. And also, the other thing that they're coming after pensioners for was Angela Rayner actually refused to rule out scrapping the single-person council tax discount, which will affect young people and widowed pensioners. So when it comes across the piece, it's just scary. It's scary. That I'm genuinely scared by it. I blame the Tories for doing that. That was a very roundabout way, Alex, of saying that I blame the Tories for getting us into this mess, because they put net zero into law and actually gave these maddos license to do this.
Yeah, this is the thing I was just talking about with those leadership contenders. It's who is the real right winger? Who is the person of common sense? But the Tory party's also forgotten that it's now the work. I shouldn't say it is anymore. It isn't. It used to be, at least when Boris got elected, the party of the working classes. The political magnosphere has shifted. The polls have realigned. The Labour Party is the party of snobby elites and wealthy, and the Tories are the party of the working class, or at least they were until reform came along. And all they do is punish people. So look, the Tories have done so much damage. All those powers you saw weaponized after the riots, the censorship powers, were all put in place by the Tories. They were all there. Keir Starmer didn't have to write any new laws; he already has them.
And the online safety bill.
The online safety bill, quite, and then you're going to see those added to with the Islamophobia bill, and possibly one for sexism as well, where you become a terrorist or an extremist for saying anything misogynistic.
Eunice, how misogynistic? Yeah. Sorry, Alex. Eunice, how worried are you about Labour? Because I've just went through a few things there about what Labour will do and how I actually blame the Tories for getting us into this mess. But Eunice, how worried are you about the making in law Islamophobia? You know, outlawing it essentially, because the definition defining what Islamophobia is, well, Angela Rayner was asked to do that by Lee Anderson, the Reform MP, and she at the dispatch box floundered like a sort of, I don't know, a goldfish out of a bowl.
Exactly, and they say phobia is an irrational fear of something, and I recently done a video with Reasoned that done quite well actually.
Oh, I've heard of that.
It's got like 300,000 views, and I encourage all the viewers to go and watch it. And basically what I do in the video is that I go through the Quran verses that's accepted by all Muslims all around the world. And my question to Keir Starmer and the Labour government is, are we Islamophobic if we question these things? He says in the Quran, and I didn't go for the hadiths, because honestly, if you go for the hadiths, like honestly, your brain like rots in a way. Because the hadiths are so extremely dark that you have no idea. So are we Islamophobic if we question things based on facts? But if we go through the Quran and say, look, this is what it says in the Quran, or this is what it says in the Hadiths. And again, as I said, phobia is an irrational fear of something. This is not about protecting the Muslim community. This is about cancelling freedom of speech. And that's just not acceptable in a democratic society.
Yeah, Chloe, I think you did a little video. You've definitely covered Lee Anderson got at the as a Reform MP. I was going to say at the dispatch box. That was in my dreams.
I did do a video on that. Him asking Angela Rayner about the Islamophobia definition yesterday. I mean, it was just embarrassing for Angela Rayner. I mean, she just mumbled and bumbled and couldn't put a sentence together. It's like, I'll have to think about that. We'll have to give careful consideration to any definition that we provide for that. We will give one in due course. She's got absolutely no bloody clue. And if the Labour Party are going to talk bang on about Islamophobia all of the time, you know, at least don't do it until you've decided what your definition is, so that people know what you're talking about, and so that people have an idea of, you know, what's allowed and what's not allowed, right? We had in the run up to the general election, we had, I don't know if many of you viewers saw that video of Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan sort of sitting down on the sofa having a heart-to-heart about how bad Islamophobia is and how we really need to clamp down on it, especially on social media. They said, or Sadiq Khan specifically,
we're all going to prison.
Yeah, but the thing is I don't want the Labour Party to say Islamophobia is illegal, but if you're going to do it, at least make it very, very clear what it is, because if you make it vague, everyone is terrified to say anything because they don't know what's included and what's not included.
That's the point. That's the point.
The hilarious thing about this all is that they're so desperate to legislate against something they can't even define. They have told you they hate it. They hate whatever this boogeyman is of Islamophobia, but they don't know the definition of it. It's absolutely bonkers. It's basically saying, we want to write legislation about something we have no clue what it is, some ethereal thing, but we really want to ban it.
But that's what
need to know.
Is that not what they're doing across the piece, though, Alex? Like this is government by virtue signalling, isn't it? Like on the net zero issue, on the Islamophobia issue, on the all of it.
Well, quite. And the important thing to know is the reason why they're not giving you any definitions of anything is because they want to make sure it's so vague, as Chloe said, you're scared about it being vague. They want to make it so vague that they can weaponize it the same way this online safety bill has been able to have people locked up for writing posts on social media, because it's vague enough that it covers that. And that's the problem with current writing of legislation, is that they keep it vague and they say, well, we need a broad definition to protect people. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. They want to use it so they can weaponize it.
Yeah, well, can I call on them to legislate against whiteophobia, because there's an awful lot of that going around at the minute.
Absolutely. Can I just say one last thing about this, is that when they use the word phobia, it's a virtue signaling word, because, you cannot speak about Islam, you're Islamophobic, or you can't have an opinion on LGBTQ, you're homophobic, or you can't have an opinion on immigration, you're xenophobic. And again, phobia is an irrational fear of something. There is no irrational fear of Islam if you truly understand it, okay? And they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Let's assume Labour government is doing this because they want to protect Muslims, okay? Which they are not, by the way. It is all about control and all about infringing our free speech. Yes. But at the end of the day, a democracy can only survive and thrive when people have the freedom of speech to question any ideology, regardless of what it is. And when you can't have that right, you are no different than a dictatorship. And this Labour government is taking us on a fast track to dictatorship, and they are hiding their utterances in kindness. And that's just absolute nonsense.
Just finally, Eunice, one of our viewers wants another video on the Hadith, so you're going to have to do some more of those, I'm afraid.
I mean, that video is going to be like 2 hours long because the Hadith, there's like 100 Hadith books.
You'll have to go through and choose the most egregious. Paul says, when are the local elections? Some of them are next year, but actually some of them will be the year after because they're split in parts. Danny, though, on the local election says, wait until the local elections, vote out the Labour councillors. If the Tories do not buck up their ideas, then go reform and give them a chance for change. And then just finally, to end us on a funny old note, Sir Keir Starmer, I've often said he doesn't know his arse from his elbow, or actually who has a fanny and who doesn't. But on a purely, matter-of-fact note, I don't think Sir Keir Starmer knows who he is, actually. And you'll see what I mean in this clip.
Serious issue, it requires serious consideration. Serious issue, it requires serious consideration. And the Prime Minister knows the legal frameworks that have to be kept under review. It's the same test for all licences, as the Prime Minister knows. And I don't think the Prime Minister is really inviting me to put that to one side. We have to, the Leader of the Opposition. Serious issue. It requires
3 times. So 3 times there. 3 times he calls Rishi Sunak the Prime Minister when he is the Prime Minister. He's done this 3 times in one Prime Minister's question sitting. And just to play that again so you get the extent of it.
It requires serious consideration. And the Prime Minister knows the legal frameworks that have to be kept under review. It's the same test for all licences, as the Prime Minister knows. And I don't think the Prime Minister is really inviting me to put that to one side. We have to, the Leader of the Opposition.
The hilarious thing is none of the front bench behind him seem to know that he's saying anything wrong.
Well, look at her, Alex. She's like, oh dear, he's done it again. Oh,
just make a comment about Angela Rayner's fashion sense. I just don't know what she's wearing most of the time. Like, honestly.
Well, she's backing reform. That's what she's doing. It's implicitly backing reform. But, I wish he wasn't Prime Minister. So maybe subliminally, actually, Sir Keir Starmer is saying he doesn't wish he was Prime Minister either, because actually they got in on with this loveless landslide and they don't know what they're bloody doing or what they want to do, actually, apart from F everything up. So, someone says on YouTube he's having his Joe Biden moment. I mean, perhaps that's what it is. God, I wouldn't wish ill health of anyone. But 3 times to call Rishi Sunak the Prime Minister, he clearly still sees himself as leader of the opposition and not actually the man that resides in number 10 Downing Street, one of the most important landmarks in the whole wide world, for now, until it becomes a mosque.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's been leader of opposition for too long. He still hasn't mentally adjusted, so it might take some time.
Yes, yeah. Well, anyway, I thought that was...
Just speaking of PMQs and leaders of opposition, are obviously very embarrassing here that Starmer hasn't quite realised that he's Prime Minister yet. But just, over the summer when we had the huge clampdown on free speech, absolutely horrendous some of the arrests that we were seeing.
Agreed.
I know we didn't have PMQs going on, right? And we'll see what happens. I didn't watch it today, I'll admit, but we'll see what happens over the next few weeks. But over the summer, I was thinking, where is the opposition? Where is Rishi Sunak? Where is Rishi Sunak? I know we didn't have PMQs, but he's got a Twitter account, right? Where was he holding Keir Starmer to account for turning Britain into 1984? Yeah, but he could at least put a few tweets out to say, hold on a second, I'm the leader of the opposition. You're turning Britain into a dictatorship. What are you doing, right? This is the opportunity. The Conservatives, one of the things that has been difficult for them is they haven't been in opposition for so long that everything gets blamed on them, right? They say it's better better to be outside the tent pissing in, right? They've got the opportunity now
On the
to start
outside,
holding
yeah,
Keir.
yeah. Mhm.
They've got the opportunity to start holding Keir Starmer to account and make him look like the buffoon that he is. And Rishi Sunak is nowhere to be seen.
Well, I watched.
No, I know
PMQs
it was a
today.
dereliction of duty. It really, really was.
Yeah,
and
it
actually, he
was.
was in California, which everyone had said he's going to sod off to California as soon as he's no longer prime minister. And what did he go and do? Prove everyone right. You had the Labour cronyism row where they were putting people in to positions of power within the civil service that had donated to the Labour Party. Why didn't they comment on that once? You know, they've really, really let people down. And I think you're right, Chloe, to stress the severity of the crackdown on speech and debate in this country, and the Conservatives were nowhere to be found. So it really appalling. Alex, you were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say I watched PMQs today, and it's the most boring Prime Minister's questions I think I've ever, most predictable and boring thing I've ever watched. The Tories blaming Labour, Labour blaming Tories. I mean, the problem with those things is that Starmer's just going to blame the Tories for the next 5 years. So we inherited a mess and all this nonsense, and that's all you're going to get. There's no point tuning in. You're not going to learn anything new. Trust me on that one.
Exactly.
So instead, you should tune into reasoned.
Yeah,
and there's a lack of charisma in terms of, because I watched it, and like back in the day, we had Tony Blair, we had Cameron, and these were charismatic guys, and they were going at it, and it was funny and it was entertaining, and but I just watched it. It was so boring, we don't even have because I truly believe that 90% of being a leader is about charisma, and we just don't have any charismatic leaders left in this country, maybe other than Nigel Farage and a few others. But these people, they're going to take this country back to the,
I said in my video yesterday that it seems to me like Reform are the official opposition to Labour, because they're the only ones standing up in the chamber and holding them to account. The Tories and Rishi Sunak are quiet as a mouse.
I honestly think I would give a kidney to see Nigel Farage at PMQs as leader of the opposition. I honestly think I would.
That'd be great.
It would be box office. Yeah. The pièce de résistance. Right, okay, on that bombshell then of me selling a kidney, no, it's not for sale. Please don't put in bids. But if you are willing to make a donation to Recent UK, I am open for negotiation. So, on that point, please do subscribe. Please do like this video if you haven't already. Any support that you can offer us, reasoned.uk is the website that you need. And you can find Chloe, Alex and Eunice on social media. Eunice has about 10 million followers on Instagram. Alex is Elon Musk's best friend. And, well, Chloe is the star of Reasoned UK and has well and truly stolen my crown. So there we are. We'll be off now, and I've kept you all very long time. I do apologise, but thank you very much to everyone for tuning in, because we've had a record night tonight, which is great. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.